Welcome, friends, to this episode of Through Literary Lens. Welcome, Vinodji.
Very good afternoon, Rajesh ji.
Ji, we are here again, and Vinodji, we are continuing with Robert Browning.
Yes, our listeners must be remembering that we had a discussion on Robert Browning. He is one of the greatest poets of 19th century England, well-known Victorian poet, contemporary of Alfred Lord Tennyson and Matthew Arnold.
Yeah, in his times, maybe he was not that much well known. His wife Elizabeth Barrett Browning, she was a very well known poet of that time.
Posthumously, he has acquired greater fame than his contemporaries.
And Vinodji, he is one of the first persons, perhaps the first person whose real voice is available, recorded, because it was the beginning of a recording, sound recording.
Yes.
And in 1892, a few months before he died, he had an occasion in a party, he was reciting one of his poems and it was recorded.
The important form in which he has written most of his poems, it is known as dramatic monologue.
It's very intriguing, Vinodji. Dramatic and that too monologue.
Exactly. It is the speech of a single character, single person. And it is a monologue because no other character does participate in this conversation. Although it is the convention of dramatic monologue that it is in the form of address. The person, the speaker of the poem, is talking to someone who is present in the poem, sometimes speaks a word or two, otherwise his or her actions are hinted by the speaker himself.
And it's at a very important juncture in the life of the speaker.
Usually he captures a psychologically or emotional critical moment in the life of the poetic persona, and then this poetic persona or the speaker of the poem goes on speaking the innermost recesses of his heart.
Yeah, and it's not, action is not there like a drama, but action is psychological, remembrances, hopes, fantasies, whatnot.
Exactly.
Ring and the Book, his masterpiece, and very long poem of 12 books actually, dealing with a murder and narrated from various perspectives in various dramatic monologues. It's a world famous poem.
To understand it simply, dramatic monologue is a part poetry, a part drama.
Yes, definitely. And
today is both, the flavor of both
actually. So it's very different genre of poetry, we can call it, very enjoyable genre of poetry, and particularly for the people who are psychologically mind bended, who like psychological depths. For them to understand the moment in the speaker's life and what he or she thinks about it in retrospect, it's very good actually. As it is said, any literature is psychological in its flavor, but dramatic monologue is much more so.
And especially when we talk of Browning's poems, they are philosophical as well.
Yes.
Because Browning has got his own philosophy, his own approach to understand life and world.
And this he puts in the mouth of his characters.
Some of the things that help us to understand any of his poems is that he has belief in life after death.
Yeah.
Death is not the end of life, but it is considered to be the beginning or gateway to the next life. And another thing that he repeatedly says in his poems, that failures in this world are going to be successes in the next world.
Or what's heaven for, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So
and
at least we can have something to,
of the soul.
Yes, something to hope for.
And he is optimist. He is not simply put down by the troubles of his time.
Then today, Vinodji, which of his poems are we discussing?
Yeah, today we are going to discuss his very long poem, right? It's a very long poem.
More than 200 lines.
Yes, but it is really one of the beautiful poems, highly admired poems. It is prescribed for many of the postgraduate English courses all over the world. And the name of the poem is Andrea del Sarto.
Andrea del Sarto is the name of the painter.
Yeah, he is a Renaissance painter, right?
Yeah, in Italy from 1486 to 1530 is his lifetime.
And it is considered that he is one of the 4 important Renaissance painters. The other 3 being Raphael,
Michelangelo, and
Leonardo da Vinci.
And Andrea was known as flawless artist in his time. He could draw the paintings flawlessly without any error.
He lived in Florence, the town of Florence in Italy, right?
Yeah.
And the setting of the poem is that it is a time of evening. Sun is about to set and the moon is about to rise in the sky. And the poet is sitting in his chamber, right? In his drawing room, you can say in the modern language. and with his
Wife,
wife Lucrezia,
Lucrezia.
whom he not only loves but
Yeah.
adores.
And entire dramatic monologue, entire poem is addressed to her.
Yeah, poem is addressed to her.
Yeah.
Andrea loves Lucrezia like anything, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it is Lucrezia's second marriage with this famous Italian painter. And the poem starts. And it is to be understood that it is not simply the time of twilight. It's neither day nor light. At the same time, poet is in his middle age.
Yeah.
And in the course of poem, he says that this color gray is there everywhere. It is in the art. It is in the life. So gray is neither white nor black. So poet is neither extremely happy nor is completely gloomy.
Yeah, he is, so to say, in the midlife crisis, we can call it. He has lived and he has painted and he has experienced life. He has lived with Lucretia also for long. But then, that particular evening, he sits with her and he is not sure whether she loves him so deeply as he loves her. Because she
This
says, "You
this
turn your face, but does your heart also turn your heart also?"
this is a critical moment.
Yeah.
This is a critical agonizing moment in the life of Andrea
Andrea.
that poet captures in his
Yes.
poem. Poet is exhausted. He is very much tired.
He says, "I'm tired, fully tired, but I mean, 1 hour you spend with me, and that will refresh me, that will rejuvenate me."
He asks that she should spend that evening sitting beside him, hand in hand, like the married
Married
couple
couples do.
do, right? And he says this is going to refresh his body and soul. And if he feels refreshed today because of her company, tomorrow he will be able to paint in a more delightful way.
These lines, Vinodji, particularly which you have hinted at, these, I think, these are very suggestive lines. Let us sit hand in hand and look upon the scenery as married couples do.
Do.
It is hinted at that it means that they are not doing that. Their marriage is not a success. He yearns for such sort of company from his spouse, isn't it?
Exactly, the true man-woman relationship
Yeah.
is basically built upon
Mutual
mutual
understanding.
understanding, emotional sharing, physical sharing, and even sharing of the time together.
Yes.
So that is exactly he wants.
And that will rejuvenate my art. He said, tomorrow then I can paint well.
For a moment, we can
Yeah.
go beyond this the context of this poem and try to understand that the artist requires a true love from a woman to be at his best.
I remember Tagore, Vinodji,
Yes.
when in 1924 he visited Argentina, and one of his fans, he stayed with her, and then he wrote in his diary that publicly I am acclaimed. My public prize is definitely people are after me, but my private prize, something like that, he
He says, "My
called.
private self, I can
Private
realize
self, yeah,
realize
yeah.
properly only when I am
Only
loved
when
by
by
a
a
woman."
woman.
So
So
this brings out, intricate connection between the flowering of art, any art,
yeah,
be
yeah.
it a painting or poetry or music, and the devoted love of someone for whom your heart yearns for.
And it's a closed psychic system, as I call it. It is two people share a closed psychic system wherein they can enjoy their life with mutual understanding. A third person doesn't have that much access to those shared notions and shared things.
It is true in
Yeah.
the case of anybody, right? But
Anybody,
it is
yeah.
it's more
More in the case of an artist.
artist, because artist has to express the best that he can feel or think, and for that inspiration, for that if I permitted to say divine expression,
Yeah.
he madly requires love and affection.
And here Andrea's tragedy is that he has failed to get it.
He is devoted to Lucretia.
Yeah.
He loves her with his heart, with the core of his heart. But unfortunately, he has developed a feeling that she does not respond with the same degree to the love of Andrea. That is the tragedy of Andrea.
And why so? Because he knows that she is there, she sits with him because she wants money for a friend of her friend or for her cousin, so to say.
Here, we can even admire greatness of Andrea. He
Yeah,
knows
yeah.
that she loves somebody else, whom she terms as cousin.
Cousin.
And he is in debt, right? And she has to repay his debt. And how she is going to repay this debt? Andrea will paint the picture, he will sell the picture, and the money that he is going to get, he will give it to Lucretia, and Lucretia will repay the debt of her lover. Andrea is aware of all this arrangement. In spite of that, he loves her. This is the greatness of Andrea.
Definitely greatness. He says, I will give you the money in your soft hands, which are a woman in themselves. The
Yeah,
wonderful line is there.
exactly. And some
Yeah.
people may call this is mad infatuation,
Yeah.
although it may be infatuation, but this is also greatness.
Yeah.
And then Robert Browning says that if our hands come together, as if it is coming of man and woman in entirety, right?
Yes.
Right.
He terms her hand itself as a woman in itself, like curls beneath his hand, So it's very suggestive, very erotically suggestive lines.
Right.
Many are there. Yeah. Many lines are
And
there.
Andrea is aware. Sometimes
Yeah.
at one place he calls that my serpentine beauty.
Serpentine beauty. Yeah. Some people, or some critics, Vinodji, have said that he actually doesn't love Lucretia, but he visualizes her as the model only, like her dimensions, serpentine beauty. But I don't agree.
No, no.
I don't
At one
agree.
place he says
Yeah.
that if you sit, with me, I will save the money otherwise, which I should have spent on hiring a model. So
Yeah.
she will not only be his wife and beloved, but she will
Model for
also
the
serve
5 pictures.
5 pictures, right? And this shows that she's extremely beautiful.
And the language, the critics, I believe those are the surfacical critics,
Yes.
which opine like that, because language of anybody is motivated by the vocation, by his circumstances, by his situation. An auto fellow, I remember a couplet in Sindhi, Vinodji,
Yes.
where an auto fellow says, you owe me so much of money, because I have made your memory go places with me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Him.
So
So that
that's
is the thing,
right.
right? And then he goes on speaking about the greatness of his art, the comparison of himself as a painter with the three other painters, great painters of his time. And he also regrets the fact, Rajeshi, that Lucrezia does not care to understand his art.
Yes.
He's a great artist. He takes her to his studio and asks her to look at the various paintings
Yeah, yeah.
that he has done, right? And he says, how many people can do like this?
Yes.
How
He
many
says,
people?
I can count twice on your fingers. There are 20 artists, more than 20, who struggle to even paint a fraction of what I have painted.
Without leaving this city.
Without leaving this
In
city,
this city
yeah.
itself, more than 20 artists are there who are trying their best entire life,
Yeah.
but they are not able to paint even a single painting, the kind of painting that Andrea has done. So this is
The kind of
importance.
painting which Lucretia has spoiled with her robes flowing afloat in the air while coming and going.
Yes.
है ना?
So he is an accomplished artist. He's a great craftsman. But then in the following lines, he is filled with regret. He is filled with, a pain. He says, when I compare myself to especially
Michelangelo.
I'm really afraid. Michelangelo, though he may not be a perfect artist, but his paintings,
Have a soul.
a divine beauty, some spiritual power that is precisely missing, he says, in my paintings, right? And he says, look at Angelo's painting, arm is wrongly
Yeah.
painted.
And he even tries to correct it also with the pencil later in the poem. But again, he recoils from the attempt. He says, no, it doesn't. Because the soul, what of the soul? I can correct this arm, no issues. But the soul of the painting, that is precisely what I lack.
And what is interesting, Rajeshji, he says, why this soul is not there in my painting? Perhaps I have not got your love.
That's
he,
it.
he tells Lucrezia. Again, we come to the same
Yeah.
point. In order to have the soul in the painting or poetry or any art, artist requires devoted love, unconditional love of the person whom he admires. So he says, you do not pay attention to me, you do not recruit my love. And that's why perhaps that soul, that divine inspiration is missing in my
Yeah.
painting. And this is right interpretation to very great extent.
Definitely. And see the tragedy of the lover, Vinodji. As soon as he says so, again he recoils. He says, no. Perhaps you have done your best. This is what I deserved, which you have given to me.
Because he loves her so much,
So much.
that he does not want to offend her in
Yeah,
any slightest way.
Correct. So this is the tragedy of the painter, tragedy of the artist, tragedy of the lover, all rolled into one.
Then he remembers his best days. When he was invited by the King of France and he spent some time there, almost a year. And at that time, his fame, his popularity rose to the great heights, and he was admired by the king himself, right? And
Yeah.
remembers that moment when he would be working at his painting and king standing beside him, And then he says, all of a sudden I came back, right? Because you were getting
You became uncomfortable
comfortable, impatient here. Again, he sees some,
some
lines of anger on
yeah,
her face and
and he
corrects
says,
him,
no, 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 it's okay. It was destined to be like that.
right?
So I came back.
And then the money that he got from the king of France, he spent on the
Building his
construction of the house in
house.
order to please Lucrezia. Rather, he should have used that money to further his art, but he mismanaged that money. Again, she is likely to get angry, and he corrects himself. No, no, I wanted to do like that. That's it. It's not fault is not yours.
So, and his father also. People say his parents died poor. He says they were born poor, they died poor. I know. Perhaps I should have helped them or not. But then I toiled hard, painted more than 200 pictures, and got the money and made you comfortable. So it's all fortune. It's everybody's luck.
Here, Andrea becomes the mouthpiece of Browning's philosophy.
Yeah.
Everybody has to face his or her
Or
fate. So, and nobody other is responsible for anyone else. He says, even I'm not responsible for the poverty of
yeah.
my parents, right? And then he is filled with the pride that he is a great artist. He says, people are neither good sons nor good painters. At least I'm a good painter.
And he imagines a dialogue between Michelangelo and Raphael, wherein they were discussing that somebody is there here in the city who is a very good painter, and perhaps they are referring to himself, that is Andrea del Sarto. They say, he imagines, he likes to imagine that they were talking
Or
like
perhaps
that. Yeah.
he must have
Overheard,
overheard
possibly.
this conversation between Angelo and another great painter.
But this gives us an inkling that he had the great potential.
And they were saying that if he gets the right kind of patronage,
Yeah.
he could become a great painter. And then, of course, he in his fancy, right, he imagines
Yeah.
that the God will one day invite 4 painters to
Paint the walls of heaven
New Jerusalem,
in New Jerusalem.
and one will be Andrea del Sarto.
Yeah.
The other 3, of course, we know,
Yeah.
Raphael, Michelangelo, and
Leonardo.
right?
Yeah.
And again, he says, from there also again I fall back to
That's
that.
the problem, that he says, because they all three don't have wives, they're not married, but I am married to you, I am tied to you, I am tied to your love, and the kind of life as it is, then it will pull me down from the heights of the divine heights,
And
but
again,
still I will choose you.
again he says, perhaps she will get angry.
Yeah.
He says, no, no,
No, I
no,
will
no.
choose
The true inspiration doesn't come from wife. What kind of wife Michelangelo has?
Yeah.
He doesn't have a wife, still he is inspired painter. So fault, he says, lies with me. So this again makes us realize the greatness of Andrea, not only as an artist, but as a lover
As a lover.
well. He doesn't blame Lucrezia for anything, although he knows that she doesn't love him. But he says, if she doesn't love, still fault lies with me. If I am not a great painter like Angelo, still fault lies with me. So this brings us again to the a very important realization that the person who loves someone, he loves out and out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as a couplet in Hindi, तेरी खुशी से अगर गम में भी खुशी न हुई, वो जिंदगी तो मोहब्बत की जिंदगी न हुई. If even in pain I am not happy in your happiness, it's not the kind of love life which I want to live like that.
And it is really interesting to share with the audiences that Browning is considered to be one of the greatest love poets in any literature.
Yeah, and then while interpreting this poem, Vinodji, 3 possibilities come to my mind. All 3 did not have wives; they were not married, right? Let us assume that they had no companion, like the love life, right? The human love life, right? And this Andrea had wife Lucretia. Lucretia did not love him as he wanted her to love him. Then third possibility is if you get the love which you are craving for.
Yes.
Which of these 3 possibilities do you think is likely to foster the great art?
The third one.
Third one.
Because in the first possibility, the art may be great, but art can acquire, the depth provided it is inspired by love. That is my personal understanding.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, even I do think so. Even though it is said that the true art is divine art, and many people may be of the opinion that it should be in itself complete, self-motivated, without dependence on. But even I believe that the greatest art and the true art is that has to have the for its foundation.
It has to be nurtured by love,
mutual love.
And the true lover, especially one who is painter or poet or artist, he perceives divine existence in his beloved.
Yes.
So love is here elevated to that spirituality.
Definitely.
Although we should not take the word spiritually in its
Yeah, I
conventional
mean, it's a
sense.
very highly burdened word, I should
And
say.
that's why if you look at the mystics like Rabindranath Tagore, or the great Sufi poets like Shah Abdul Latif, their poetry is intertwined with erotic and spiritual elements.
Yes. Perhaps they fuse into one another
Yeah, they fuse
many
into
a
one.
times.
It's very difficult to separate where
Separate
is
them.
erotic and where it is spiritual.
Yeah.
So eroticism is elevated to spirituality, and spirituality is intertwined with eroticism. That is perhaps the right way, and that is perhaps where the great poet can express themselves adequately.
Yeah, but in this particular poem, Browning has outlined the tragedy of the artist as well as the tragedy of the lover. But still, the
And
glimpses of the
they have spent the
greatness
entire evening, right,
evening,
talking like
yeah,
this, and it is getting dark, and therefore he asks Lucretia to come inside. And
inside.
when they go inside, again his conscience pricks him that the money that he had got from the king of France, he has is spent on the construction of this house. So every brick of the house, though it is of cement and mud, but it shines like a gold, and this shows that his conscience still continues to prick him.
And whistles of the cousin are heard and
Yeah,
overheard
and
many
Lucrea's lover
times.
is waiting
Lover.
outside, and repeatedly he whistles her that she should come out, and she is getting impatient.
And the poem also ends like that. Oh my cousin again.
Yeah,
Oh my love.
go my love.
Yeah.
So you look at the greatness. I
Yeah.
will say that
Yeah. Yeah.
he consents,
Yes.
fully knowing that she is going to meet her lover, but he says, "Go my
I
love."
love. That's the he loved me enough to let me go.
Exactly, exactly. This is really, and in the course of the poem, he also expresses his grudge, regret,
Yeah.
and he
Yeah.
says, "What is there in your cousin that you love him
Yeah.
and not me?"
Not me.
And this is a really difficult question.
Yes.
If somebody doesn't love you,
Yes.
you
However
simply,
great artist you are, anybody you can be.
yeah,
But if there is no love, there is no love.
no love, because you cannot even
Yeah.
understand why the other person is
Yeah.
not loving
Yeah.
and loving somebody else.
Yes.
तुम मुझे न चाहोगी तो कोई बात नहीं, किसी और को चाहोगी तो मुश्किल होगी.
Yeah. It will be difficult if you love somebody else. If you don't love me, that's okay.
That's okay. So that is a popular song,
Yeah,
Hindi song
yeah.
sung by Mukesh.
Yeah.
So on that note, we come to end, and this is a really interesting, beautiful, and great poem.
And you have to dwell deep. You have to read it for yourself. The kind of lines you get there.
There are so many things that we could not cover in this discussion,
definitely.
because it's very difficult to speak about
Yes.
Browning and get exposed all the layers of
Yes.
the poem, right? They are artistically woven, right?
Yes,
So there's a
yes.
content. There is
Even though there is no rhyming, only rhythm is there.
yes,
Yeah.
but he's a master.
Yeah.
He's a master.
Yes.
Some of the lines read like proverbs. They
Yeah.
are so pithy, so condensed.
Definitely.
So, friends, we are sure that you must have got interest in Robert Browning's poem, especially in this poem. Read by yourself and tell us how you like it. Give your comments. Waiting for your comments. And we take your leave with the promise that we'll be back with some other discussion. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.